This is no disrespect to Colorado, but this is a perfect get-right game for the TCU offense. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I appreciate you, whether you are an everydayer who's been here every step of the way, or maybe you're a new listener looking to become an everydayer. I accept the challenge. I am Darrion Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, and today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. It's all about TCU versus Colorado. We looked at some narratives on Wednesday's episode about this being a revenge game. Please go check that out if you haven't. Yesterday, we talked to Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs about this head-to-head matchup from each side. Go check that out if you haven't. Today, instead of looking at narratives, instead of talking to the opposition, we're going to focus on the key matchups that will define this TCU versus Colorado game. And in the tail end of today's episode, we'll wrap up looking at Kaleb Elarms-Orr, who I think is going to be a pivotal player on the defense. I think he's going to be key, and I'll tell you why. Segment 2, we're going to take a look at the wide receivers because the wide receivers need a bounce-back game, specifically Jordan Dwyer in my bold predictions. We need a bounce-back game here, and I think that Colorado opens the door for it. But speaking of opening the door appears open for Kevorian Barnes, and I think that this week we see the return of the back. And this is a player who I have a very high respect for. I think that he's the best running back in this room. If I had to pick out of the lineup, just going through and saying this is the size and this is the things I've seen, I would pick Kevorian Barnes as my lead back. I think that he's been effective to prove he is the lead back. So this is both the eye test of, the combine conversation of shirt shorts, just what do you want your back to look like? Kevorian Barnes. What do I want my back to perform like? Kevorian Barnes. So to me, Barnes is that top running back in this room. And I know that they have a lot of talented guys, but I'll be honest with you. When Kevorian Barnes isn't in the TCU lineup, it feels like something is missing. And I think that Payne, good running back. Battle, good running back. But there's a dimension of physicality that is absent when you don't have Kevorian Barnes. And I'm not sure if I came to that conclusion after the SMU game or after the Arizona State game. But I do know I began to have these feelings after the SMU game because Barnes has only played a game and a half for TCU. It's the reason I can't heap too much praise on him because I feel like he hasn't established himself enough yet. But I do see the potential. I have to kind of rein myself in from speaking too highly because he still has to prove some things to me. I just gut feelings, I guess. But anyway, he left in that Abilene Christian game. So against SMU, there was no Barnes. It was just Jeremy Payne, Trent Battle. And they had good plays. But the problem is, to me, and maybe this is just a Darrion thing, I'm okay with that. But to me, there was a dimension that was missing. I don't know if I was able to quite put my finger on it before the Arizona State game. I think I was, but I know for sure after the Arizona State game, it confirmed it. There's no physicality in the trenches. There's no, I'm going to pound you. There's no, I'm going to hit you in your mouth. And I've said this a couple of times, but this is the best way that I can explain it. Kevorian Barnes has a style that punches you in the mouth. Kevorian Barnes has a style that when you get to the fourth quarter, you feel like you've been in a drag out fight. I don't think that Payne nor Battle really have that dimension to their game. I think they're talented running backs. I think they're mostly outside the tackle backs who can get some things going on the inside, but they have a physicality. They're not all finesse, but they're not a physical running back. I wasn't watching. It was actually on Twitter. It was just a snippet, but it was a snippet from the St. Brown's podcast in which they were talking to David Montgomery. And he was talking about how he hates the term power back because it makes it seem like you're put in a box. And unfortunately, I find myself victim of doing that from time to time, where I'm not trying to put Palmer, I'm not trying to put Payne, Battle, or Barnes in a box. I'm not. But at the same time, I do feel like they have certain lanes that they excel in. And being physical and punching the defense in the mouth is a lane that Barnes excels in more than I feel like the other two do. So I do want to say that. I won't call him a power back. All right, Demo? We ain't calling running backs power backs no more. But seriously, I do think that there's a dimension that wasn't there in SMU that was hard to see because of the big plays. I thought that Payne and Battle both had explosive plays in that game that allowed the running attack to look a bit better. The offense was flowing a bit better. And sometimes when you have games like Arizona State where everything hits the fan, all of the miscues are right in front of you. Some of the things that you didn't see in a win are now right in front of you, right? Because not only did you lose that game to Arizona State, you lost that game after having a 17-point lead. You weren't able to run it all. Coach Dykes talking about he's abandoning the run. Yikes. Yikes. You're not supposed to abandon the run when you're in a close game. That tells you how bad it is. That tells you how poor that this running attack was. You needed Kevorian Barnes to come back. But honestly, if Barnes was in that game, I don't know how much different it would have been, because you did not do a good job blocking the Arizona State front. This, however, is a perfect opportunity for Kevorian Barnes to come back, and all signs point to his return. Now, Dykes did say on Tuesday, if the game was Tuesday, that Barnes wouldn't have played. But I believe my timeline is correct. This is an important tell. On Wednesday, Kevorian Barnes ditched that non-contact jersey. So that's a noticeable step up in your availability, or the chances of your availability, because you go from not accepting any contact to now accepting contact. As the week's going on, you're progressing. My NFL brain says that goes from limited participation to full participation. And anytime I see that on the injury report, I begin to feel a little bit more confident that that player is going to play, because I feel like he's making the strides towards being available, especially if that transition from limited to full, that transition from non-contact to contact happens before the last day of practice. So now you're going to have a couple of days in this mode. I do think that we see Kevorian Barnes. And for me, you look at this Colorado defense. This Colorado defense is one thing that we talked about one thing of many that we talked about in the crossover episode. And I can't remember the exact word that Borba used for it. I think it was like atrocious or abysmal. It was something bad, and it wasn't just, it's not good. It wasn't just bad. It was terrible. It's one of the words that really describes a weak run defense for Colorado. I'm looking at my chops. Now, one thing we talked about is, how do the yards get accumulated against Colorado? Because a lot of times he focused on the quarterback, but the running back is a little bit inconsistent. So LJ Martin out of BYU was the leading running back in this conference, in the Big 12, until he played Colorado. And I'm not saying that brought down his total a lot, but he is averaging right now 100 yards per game. He was under 60 last week. Under 60. He's now number 2 behind Raleek Brown. And I think we all know, on this show at least, we all know how Raleek Brown got to the number 1 rusher in the Big 12. But mostly he talked about the quarterbacks. And I'll say this. Is Josh Hoover extremely athletic? No. But what I do think Josh Hoover is a mobile quarterback. And the thing about mobile quarterbacks, statue quarterbacks, and running quarterbacks is I try to throw in a delineation now, because there's so many quarterbacks who can move, but there's only a few that move like Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Like those are true dual threats. At this point, it used to be where if you could move a little bit, you were mobile, right? I don't think that's a good definition anymore. Josh Hoover is a mobile quarterback. He can move. We've seen that a few times. The thing about playing or struggling against running quarterbacks is 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, it's not because you just got out-athleted. It's not because of a Herculean effort. I think we saw that a couple of times versus Sam Levitt, where the pass rush got to him, but he's just a better athlete. That doesn't happen on most times. Most times it's a lack of discipline. Most times it's open lanes. And mobile quarterbacks like Josh Hoover can take advantage of that. Am I looking for Hoover to run for 70, 80, 90 yards? No. But that's where the running back comes into play. So while Colorado was able to stop LJ Martin, They really struggled against the Wyoming running back where he had over 120. So you're looking at a inconsistency. That means they can be had. If they can be had, I think Kevorian Barnes can have them. I think Kevorian Barnes coming back from this injury, this is a great time to get him into the mix. Will he run for a $120? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, right? But he's coming back from injury. It's hard to project. I don't even know what kind of workload that he's going to carry. These are things to play in the that come into play. But I do know that I think he's going to be an effective runner. And this has been something I've really focused on over the last couple of months. Like, this is definitely a 2025 football season thing. Effectiveness over production. And it's not that you don't want a productive player. Of course, you want a player that's going to get 100 yards receiving or 100 yards rushing or 350 passing. Like these things matter. But at the same time, it's not the only way to value a player. You have to look at the effectiveness. It's almost like when you talk about garbage yards. Oh, well, 60 of his 100 yards came when they were down 15 points in the last two drives, or when they were down 23 points in the last two drives. There was no way they were going to come back, right? That's garbage time. We understand how those things should be valued. But at the same time, sometimes a running back having 5 carries for 50 yards, well, that's 10 yards a pop, but it's not 100. And a lot of times people aren't looking at the yards per carry. So he has a very effective 50. Or maybe he's a short yardage guy who comes in and his yards per carry aren't that high. But you know, when it was the goal situation or it was a 3rd and 1, he got it 3 out of the 4 times. Right? These are things that I look at as just as valuable as yards per carry, just as valuable as yards per game, the effectiveness of a player. And a lot of times when talking about workload, you have to look at effectiveness over production, because if the guy only touches it 7 times, is he making the best use of his 7 touches? And if he is, we should credit that, even if it's not the same as somebody who's getting 20 touches. The numbers may look differently, but the effectiveness can not only be equal, sometimes it slights and slants towards the guy who only has a limited amount of touches. But speaking of a limited amount of touches, it feels like the wide receivers didn't bring down enough of their touches. It feels like they didn't bring down enough of the plays that were there. And I'm looking directly at Jordan Dwyer. But I think that this is a bounce back game in the making. As a matter of fact, it has to be. We'll break down why as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, and Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture. They keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward was Kaleb Elarms-Orr's breakup in the end zone against Arizona State, because that was a play that, in my opinion, kept all of the momentum forward. Because if that play doesn't happen and Arizona State catches that touchdown, we might not be talking about a game that came down to the wire between TCU and Arizona State, instead a game that Arizona State pulled away in the fourth quarter. I do think that was a huge moment for not only TCU's defense, not only Kaleb Elarms-Orr, but also TCU's chances of winning the game. It kept it even. It kept it close. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. Just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. It's almost the weekend. It's almost TCU versus Colorado. It's 6:30 game, so go ahead and DoorDash yourself a little bit of food for dinner. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's break it down. Now, for the Frogs, I got to go back to Kaleb Elarms-Orr, but don't worry, I'll pick a different play. You know why? Because he has many to pick from. And I'm going to look at the sack against Sam Levitt, in which he was able to stop the mobile quarterback that it felt like nobody was really able to stop that day. So we want to go ahead and give credit, because when everything was on the line, when you really needed it and you didn't know what you were going to do, Kaleb Elarms-Orr came through the same way that DoorDash would do for you. Ooh, man, Dr. Seuss ain't got nothing on me. All right, just like Kaleb Elarms-Orr delivered for the Frogs, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on Big 12 because this is a big time week. All right, big time week. I think we have a big game on Friday night. I think tonight we have a big game between BYU and somebody. Anyway, I ain't worried about that right now because I did too much looking here. I did too much looking there. Instead, I need to look right here. All right, need to look right at the TCU wide receiver room, and specifically Jordan Dwyer. I mean, I was going to say that the wide receivers need to bounce back. In one way they do is Joseph Manjack was 17 yards away from keeping the TCU 100-yard receiver streak alive. So I guess in a way, the team needs to bounce back. But specifically Jordan Dwyer, and more now than ever. I highlighted Dwyer as a player who, in my opinion, was a bounce back candidate. Jordan Dwyer is a player who, in my opinion, or not a bounce back candidate, he was a star candidate last week. I came out here and told you that with Eric McAllister on the field, Jordan Dwyer will be the top receiver for TCU, and he'd go over 100 yards. And that was a whole process, and I don't want to go through everything in it. But the point is, I've never looked so foolish with my bold predictions. Not only did Jordan Dwyer not live up to the hype, Jordan Dwyer was credited, in my opinion, this isn't a stat for real, but he was credited with an interception because that ball hit him in the chest in the red zone and it bounced back right into the Arizona State defender's hands. And it took points off the board coming out of halftime. Now, on Tuesday's episode, we talk about how that was a concerning trend. And it's something that is not specific to Dwyer. It's just been something happening to the Horned Frogs offense this year. It needs to be fixed. Please go back to Tuesday's episode. I think this is, I referred you to Thursday. I referred you to Wednesday. I referred you to Tuesday. I'm going to find a way to reference you back to that Monday episode. I just got to think about what I talked about in Monday. All right. I talked for 3 hours a week. You have to forgive me. Anyway, it just wasn't good enough. The performance just flat out was not good enough from the wide receivers for TCU. So let's look at these numbers real quick and then we'll talk about it. Joseph Manjack was 6 for 83. DJ Rogers was the second leading receiver for 4 for 60. And then Jordan Dwyer, 3 for 42. And honestly, there's probably at least 40 more yards he's supposed to have in this game. Probably about 2 to 3 more catches he's supposed to have in this game. I thought that some of the, I think he had a PI. I don't think I really cared for that PI. The game was a week ago, so I can't remember. It wasn't a huge call, but I don't remember really liking that PI when it was called. Anyway, Jordan Dwyer is a guy who I put a lot of emphasis on last week because I thought Eric McAllister would be heavily focused on to the point where Dwyer would just be the lead guy. And you know what? They came out and threw to Dwyer 3 times in a row to start the game. 3 times in a row to start the game. I don't think he got more than 6 targets that day. I don't think I got more than 7 targets that day because he dropped a few, man. Like this was just, it was not a good game by Dwyer. But unfortunately, or fortunately, time moves on, depending on how you look at it. And you need him this week. You do, because Eric McAllister probably is not going to play. So you're going to be looking at a lot of Jordan Dwyer having to be the top guy, mixed with Joseph Manjack in the slot. Maybe he's going to be the top guy. It's going to be between those two players. Surprise name, so Ed Small came in for Jordan Bailey when he got injured, and he had a really good game. I don't think we've seen Bailey since that injury against Abilene Christian, but Ed Small had a good game. Ed Small had a standout performance where people were really talking about what Small was able to do, the true freshman. So you want to give a lot of credit to him. When McAllister went out, somebody they highlighted was Dozie, and Dozie wasn't supposed to play. The wide receiver replaced McAllister. If McAllister doesn't play this week, you'll see Dozie, and McAllister hasn't practiced that much. I don't think he's practiced at all this week. And if he has been in a no-contact jersey. Dozie got a significantly more amount of reps in this week leading up to the matchup versus Colorado versus the matchup versus Arizona State. And one thing that wide receiver coach Malcolm Kelly praised was how quick that Dozie was able to get under control, be able to step into a moment that was a little bit large. Like this was a big game versus Arizona State in a high, intense environment. He stepped in, and not only did he play well, he was getting open a lot. And the ball didn't go his way. I expect that to change this week. I think that Dozie is going to be a part of this game plan. He filled in for Eric McAllister when no one expected him to because McAllister practiced all week. This week, you're going to see a lot more Dozie in practice reps, which means Hoover's going to be a lot more comfortable with the wide receiver, and I think you're going to see some targets. So I'll be really interested to see what he does. But all in all, it comes down to Jordan Dwyer and Joseph Manjack. That's who's going to be replacing your lead wide receiver. And Colorado can be had. Like, this is a thing. Colorado's run defense is susceptible to attack. The passing attack, susceptible to being attacked. Like this is not a game where the defense or where the TCU offense can't have their way. This is why I say, and it's no disrespect to these players, this is a perfect get-right game for the TCU offense. They have a running attack that's going to return Kevorian Barnes and go up against a Colorado team that's been at best. Then you're going to go up, and they're the second worst. I think they're the second worst team in the run defense. Let me make sure I don't just be talking on my what. Let me make sure I'm not lying on that. Run defense. Yeah, they're the second worst run defense, allowing 197 yards per game. Nearly 200. I think TCU, look, I'm not going to get too deep into it because the moment is past at this point, but if Sonny Dykes wants to run the ball 35 to 40 times, today is the time to do it, or tomorrow is the time to do it. It is. But on the passing attack, I think the fact that the run game is the run defense is so soft, it leads to less attacks in the passing game. So numbers can lie. I've said it before, I say it again. Numbers don't lie, but people surely use numbers to lie. And they can mislead because when you look at the 207 yards per game that Colorado allows through the air, that's 50 less than TCU. And TCU is the second worst statistical passing defense in the Big 12. They're closer to worse than they are third worst. They're only like 4 yards away from being the worst pass defense in the conference. Right? Like you would think, there's a big difference between Colorado. Well, one big difference is TCU's played North Carolina technically, but North Carolina was in pass mode the entire game. So if we're just talking about racking up numbers, they were in pass mode the whole game. Abilene Christian in pass mode the whole game. SMU, that's another P4 opponent that has Kevin Jennings, and they are primed for big-time plays. Then last week, you play Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson. Like, if you really want to have a conversation about the TCU pass defense in numbers versus impact, I think there's only really been one game in which they were weak. SMU, half a game. I thought, could have been better. But overall, I don't think that this is the worst defense at stopping the pass in the conference. I just don't feel like they deserve that. But Colorado, also, when you run the ball down their throat, you don't have to pass as much. Amongst teams with 5 games played in the Big 12 right now. That's important because everybody hasn't played the same amount of games. Amongst the teams that have played 5 games in the Big 12, only Utah has seen less passing attempts against them. TCU has seen 127, and Colorado's at 136. And TCU's played 1 less game than Colorado. That makes a difference. These are things that paint the picture of what you have to look forward to. This is not a pass defense that is stingy. They allow the 3rd most yards per catch, right? Like the 3rd most yards per attempt. Like, this is a defense that can be had. You just need the TCU offense to bounce back, Dwyer. You need Manjack to keep doing what Manjack's doing. You need guys like Dozie and Ed Small to pop out again because these are players who are a little bit under the radar when you have your full complement. But when you don't, Small and Dozie are going to have to get in. They're going to have to play. And Dozie's going to be the guy who fills in for Ed Small. Who's going to fill in for Eric McAllister. So I'm really looking to see what he can do against Colorado. Deion hasn't been happy, guys. He has not been happy with his cornerbacks. He hasn't. They got to play better. All of them got to play better. We got to do a better job preparing them and coaching them. He said, everybody in the country, this is an indictment. Everybody in the country is going to know you, not for the right reason. As we continue, we're going to look at the TCU defense. I don't think there's any more that needs to be said as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Now, who's trying to get up and get active? Because Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you are running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that will help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I love the Peloton IQ system because it offers real-time strength coaching and actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every move safer and more smart. This is what I need. It's what everybody needs when they're training. Everybody needs a little bit of advice and making sure that they're not hurting themselves, right? So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. As we're closing out today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. This one is simple. This one is plain. Let's flash this up right now. Unexpected Star was supposed to be my headline. It's supposed to be my thumbnail Friday night. All right. What you're looking at if you're on the YouTube side of things is unreleased material. If you're a music fan like I am, you love a good unreleased song. Well, let me show you an unreleased thumbnail because Kaleb Elarms-Orr was, though this was not the lead topic, Kaleb Elarms-Orr was the unexpected star of Friday night's game versus Arizona State. And when we go into Saturday's game against Colorado, he's going to need to have that same type of performance because Kaidon Salter is a running back, or excuse me, a quarterback who can run the ball. He just is. Kaidon Salter is a guy who can, when he drops back, if he doesn't see anything, he can get loose and he can hurt you with his legs. Kaleb Elarms-Orr is the guy I'm looking at to stop that, whether that's through spies or heating them up. I'm going to give you a quick little stat, and we're gonna like I said, this is going to be a brief one. But let's go to Kaidon Salter's ability under pressure, clean, blitz, not blitz via PFF. It's really weird, but when he's clean, this is not the weird part. This is the obvious part. When he's clean, 80.4. 80.4. 77.4 against the pass, and he even has a 69.8 run score, right? So he's doing very well when kept clean. But when he is under pressure, and this isn't a lot, right? Like this is 39 dropbacks that he's under pressure. 44.4 grade, 31.8 passing grade. These are the important things, but still 70.2 running. So he's going to run the football. That's something that you have to be aware of. Now you go into blitz and you go to blitz versus not blitzed. So when he's not blitzed, he's a 58.5. That's strange. Whatever. And then when he's blitzed, he's an 80.8. Now here's the thing. Blitzed and under pressure are often synonymous, but they are not. Right? I think that they are actually incorrectly used synonymously because you want to put a quarterback under pressure when you blitz, but sometimes when you blitz, it doesn't work. When you blitz, it gets picked up, and now the quarterback is clean. So please do not take his under pressure stats as the same as his blitz. These are not the same. He has 39 dropbacks under pressure. He has 33 when blitzed. It doesn't even tell you how many of those blitzes equated to pressures because Colorado's offensive line is actually pretty solid. Offensive line has been protecting. And yesterday we talked to Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs, and he talked about how they are giving Salter the most time to throw in the nation. So this is a solid defense or offensive line. I don't care what his numbers are when blitz. Send Kaleb Elarms-Orr. Send them because you see what happens when you do get pressure. Like, I'm taking Kaidon Salter's positive grade, the fact that he has his best grade when he's blitzed. I'm not taking that as the same with Sam Levitt. Excuse me. I'm not taking that the same as I did with Sam Levitt. Sam Levitt knew how to run. He knew how to maneuver. It wasn't that nobody was getting to him. It's just when he snaps into his innate ability, he's different. Kaidon Salter, I'm taking this as you don't get pressured to you when you're blitzed. So it's not that you're just this super poised guy. It's more so that, your offensive line does a good job because when pressure does get to you, you're not good. Sam Levitt was good under pressure. He was good when being blitzed. He was good with both. Salter's only good when he's being blitzed. He's bad when he's under pressure. What did that tell you? What does that tell you? That does not align with a quarterback who's doing it himself. Like that, when you blitz him, he does this. No. No, that's the offensive line. And when the offensive line breaks, that's when Kaidon Salter breaks. And I already think he's broken because he's talking about how his mind was messed up from being benched. Salter has been in college for 4 years. He played at Liberty for a couple of years before coming over to Colorado. Like, I think he should have the mental fortitude to not A, make that comment, and B, feel that way. Like, I really think he should. I'm not shaming him for it, but the truth of the matter is his mentality is not intact. His mentality is broken, right? I think that if you get him under pressure and you rattle him, I think you can impact him. There's one thing when you're really settled in yourself, and another when you are unsure. It sounds like he's uncertain of himself. You start heating him up, you start getting bad plays, you're gonna start stacking them because Kaidon Salter's mind is not. I should find this quote. Well, I don't feel like doing it right now because I don't want to get it wrong. Kaidon Salter's mind is still messed up by the fact that Deion Sanders benched him a couple of weeks ago. And if he struggles under pressure and you're able to pressure him, Kaleb Elarms-Orr with blitzes, bringing him down with sacks, if you're able to pressure Kaidon Salter and you already know that his mind is not all the way there, what's going to happen when he starts to make those mistakes? What's going to start happening when he's under duress, when he's getting brought down to the ground? Maybe he gets the pass off, but he gets hit by a guy like Ansel Demba. Like, what happens at that point? To me, you're just going to have a steamroll. You're going to snowball bad play after bad play after bad play, and that helps the TCU defense. And the biggest key factor, the cog in that machine that I think is going to help it really go is Kaleb Elarms-Orr. Whether he's blitzing, whether he's spying, whether he's flowing around to the run game, I don't care. I'm focusing on the Salter legs versus Kaleb Elarms-Orr matchup. I think that would be the biggest matchup for the Horned Frog defense. We'll be back tomorrow. To break down our the game. So it'll be late night. Come join, talk to me. We had a really successful post-game show last week. I'm hoping that we can even double it or improve on it. But regardless, I'm here to come chop it up with you guys and answer some questions. I thought we had some really, really, really good comments. So I guess my challenge to you is to outdo those comments from last week. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, which will be tomorrow. Remember this, tomorrow. Take care. Stay blessed. Peace.